right. Okay, we're ready. All right, we're going to call this meeting to order. Thank you, each of you who have joined us today on this beautiful morning. Terry, would you please call the roll?
Bill Price.
Here.
Dan Keating.
Here.
Bob Ross.
Here.
Bill Flanagan.
Here.
Catherine Franks.
Here.
General Lee Baxter. Superintendent Hoffmeister.
Here. All right, and do we have a quorum? And did we comply with the Open Meetings Act? Thank you. Very good. Thank you, board members. Let's please stand and join me for Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag. The salute to the Oklahoma flag, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of Oklahoma. Its symbols of peace unite all people. Thank you. Please be seated. All right. Well, I'd like to begin by mentioning that we are now live streaming this today. This is the first day. You can find the link at sde.ok.gov if you would like to join us virtually at a time when you may not be able to be with us. And I appreciate all of the both of you who might be out there listening right now, or watching, actually, because it is videoed. No, but thank you very much for Marty, who was able to make certain that this is something that is a reality today. We know that this is part of our effort for greater engagement with the community across the state that care about education. So I appreciate that work, and thank you very much, Marty. All right, so you may have seen in the news we held a press conference to report out from the Teacher Shortage Task Force. A member of that task force was Brent Bushy. Brent Bushy is one of our members who stepped up and said, you know, we'll help with one of the recommendations. There were about 40 recommendations by the task force. About 9 required legislation. All of those have passed. One of those recommendations was to have a poll, a survey of those who keep a teaching certificate active in the state of Oklahoma, and that has to be renewed every 5 years. So these are individual teachers that we know are out there because they are keeping their certificate active, but they are no longer teaching in an Oklahoma public school. There are actually 32,000 individuals who continue to keep that certificate active. So as you may have followed, we were able to really learn a lot of information about why they left the classroom and what it may take to be able to entice them to come back and teach again. So this was great information to have. The task force is ready to then make further recommendations based on that, but it certainly supports with very concrete evidence with a margin of error of 1%. We are able to extrapolate quite a bit that there are thousands of Oklahomans that would be willing to come back, even with pay alone. But we know that there's more than pay, and we are focusing as well on providing the support, the resources, training, and made that part of our budget proposal to the legislature 2 days ago. We took your budget that was approved last fall and made the argument for why these requests will support the goals of the State Department as we put forward an 8-year plan that is incorporated in our federal ESSA plan. So that is how we fashioned together and presented to you the rationale behind our budget proposal. And we know that it is important for making certain that teachers are supported so that they can be in the classroom, so that our students have greater outcome as well. It all folds together. There is not one bumper sticker solution. It is all of these components working together in a full spectrum of pre-K all the way through the graduation point as students move to post-secondary education. Let's see. Also, it's worth noting that as I first stepped into office, we made a budget presentation about 2 weeks after that date in January 3 years ago. And we requested a $5,000 teacher pay raise to be regionally competitive with a 5-year phase-in. And each year, subsequent to that very first request, we have kept pace with that request and asked for that incremental amount that was part of the original plan. However, this year, we have proposed the full $5,000, and we included that as not an addendum to our budget, but as a part of our full request. In order to give a $5,000 pay raise to all certified teachers, that will require $289 million being added to the amount that's appropriated through the funding formula. So that, along with other areas of increase which you are familiar with, was also requested in a formal presentation earlier this week. We had robust discussion around those requests, and we look forward to having additional conversations with legislators as they seek to support public school. Again, I reminded them that it is my constitutional obligation to bring the budget and the needs of Oklahoma school children to them, and it is the legislature's constitutional responsibility. First, it was to establish a free public education system, and every year after, to maintain. And so this is part of our request as well. All right, I want to shift gears a moment and look at those that we seek to honor right here in our own department, at the State Department, as well as one very amazing educator who is with us today. We'll start with our January Employee of the Month, John Parker. John is, and actually, John, would you stand, and I'm going to say a few words about you first. In fact, you can go to the podium, and we'll all look at you as I speak about you. How about that? And I'll join you in just a minute, and we'd love to get a picture. John is the director of Troops to Teachers and is doing a wonderful job recruiting service men and women into classrooms. John has a goal to place 70 hires in the classroom before the new school year starts in August. Here's what one coworker had to say about John. He goes above and beyond to help the troops he deals with every day, learning about all aspects of the certification process in order to make it an easier transition for his applicants. Another coworker said, I see the way he interacts with potential teachers and can see that he wants each and every one of them to succeed. There was an applicant here recently that was concerned about his attire for an upcoming interview. A short while later, I noticed that John was wearing a t-shirt instead of his dress shirt that day. John literally gave the man the shirt off his back. These are just a few sample words of those who work with John every day. And John, you are an example of excellence in the agency, and we appreciate what you've done. You've served your country and our country, and you continue to serve here in the state, and we appreciate this transition for those who have concluded service and want to continue to give back. And we appreciate you being the bridge to make that happen in education. So I want to take a photo and give you this, all right? Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to let you all hold this. Thank you very much. All right, I appreciate it. Thank you again. Congratulations. All right. And we have someone extremely special to share a little highlight about Martha Eves. Martha Eves is a wonderful person that I want you all in the room, if you don't know, to get to know for just a moment as I speak about Martha. Martha actually is celebrating her 38 years of service, and she is retiring, and we are going to absolutely miss Martha. Martha, would you do me a favor, and also would you go to the podium? Because I am going to ask you to say just a few words too, so just get ready for that. Okay, so last and certainly not least, today we recognize Martha Eves, the Director of Events, and that is a part of public affairs for her 38 years of service to the state of Oklahoma. Martha will be here a few more days before she's retiring, and she is eager to spend more time with her family, particularly with her grandbaby in Houston. I know that Martha is the one, I'm telling you, she's no nonsense, and it's going to happen, and she's going to get it done. But Martha was tasked with something new when we began Engage OK on the road. First of all, Martha was responsible for putting together an outstanding conference my first year here. It was just really incredible at the Cox Convention Center. But due to budget cuts, we came up with a way, and Martha was part of making decisions that would save the state funds. And she was able to help Heather Griswold to have a way to bring the State Department of Education and professional development support to teachers and take that on the road. And we went to 7 sites the first year, 7 sites last year, and all of that had to be coordinated among many other important events that just go off like without a hitch due to the professional work and details that have been taken care of by Martha. Martha, I know you've done a lot of things. You've seen a lot of things here in the department as well. And I want to give you a moment as I also come up to give you a very special recognition here to just say a few words about your time of service. And you might need to lift that microphone.
Well, like Superintendent said, I've been here 38 years. I've been in many different departments at the SDE. I have definitely learned a lot. The last job I'm going out with is my ultimate favorite. I love it. I have worked under 6 state superintendents, and I can honestly say I'm going out with the best.
Oh, this is very sweet. We did not plan this. I did not know that was about to happen. That is so sweet.
Probably my first memory of Superintendent Hoffmeister when we were getting ready for our first conference, we had about, Heather, 6.5 weeks to put this conference together, which usually takes a whole year. We had the help of many people at the SDE. Not one person can run this conference. But we were working late one night, about 8 o'clock. A superintendent came out of her office to go home, and we were putting name badges together. And she sat down, she said, "Here, let me help you, or just let me take a whole box home and take care of them." Right then, she had my respect from what she'll do anything that it takes to get this job at the SDE done as state superintendent. So I've enjoyed my many, many years. Thank you.
Oh, you're awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you. Love you. All right. Okay. And now, let's see here. Just make sure I'm following where we are today. Just one moment. Yes, here we are. Now, to honor our 2017 Milken Educator, who was awarded this national honor. There are very few of these honors given through the year, and Oklahoma was so proud to have an awardee this year. Debrianne Davis, principal at Edmond North High School, is with us today. Debrianne, would you please go to the podium as well? And you can take your father with you if you would like, because I would love your dad to be honored too. Debrion is joined today by her father, Daryl Davis. Edmond, superintendent, I know Brent Town is wanting to be here if he's not here yet, and I may just not see him. But we know that this was a big surprise for Debrion at her school, and we were able to honor her last month, and actually Lowell Milken flew in to be here and actually gave the award directly to you, and that was a huge surprise. We had an enormous ceremony, and it was like a big pep rally, but Debrion planned it and had no idea it was actually for her. So that was an interesting thing. It was pretty neat. So the Milken Foundation awards this presentation, and the Milken educators are selected in early to mid-career for what they have achieved and for their promise of what they will accomplish. We want to keep these educators in education, and that is part of the reason for giving this award. In addition to this honor, there is a $25,000 prize and public recognition. And so we were a part of that. It was very exciting to see you receive that $25,000 check that you can do anything you want with. Davis's honors include membership in the National Milken Educator Network, a group of more than 2,700 top teachers, principals, and specialists dedicated to strengthening education in this country. So we are so very honored that you could be with us today. I have an award that has come now to give you, for you to put in your office, on display, to commemorate all of the magic of that moment. And I definitely wanted the board to be officially a part of giving you this as well. So this is for you. Congratulations. And we know that your father is so proud to be here today as well. Thank you so much. We're so proud of you. Thank you. It's worth noting that the baton was passed from someone in our department to Debrion Davis at Edmond North High School, and it's our very own head of the regional accreditation officers who go in and really work not just for compliance but also to help coach a lot of the schools all across the state, and it's Jason Pittenger. And Jason, why don't you just stand so people can get to know you a little bit better? So Jason was at Edmond. Yeah. Oh, go Huskies. Okay. So we're grateful that you're on our team, and watch out because we just might be. We're not recruiting you right now, but down the road. Okay. So we're so proud. So good day for Edmond. Okay. All righty. All right. Now we are. Thank you for your indulgence on all of this. It is important, and it means a lot to present people to the board so that you can recognize them. Okay, board members, we're on item 4. Actually, before we get started, let's just go ahead and let's greet those first-year superintendents who are required to attend a board meeting as part of their first year. And we are grateful that you're here today. I would love to recognize you. If you would rise and remain standing when I say your name so that we can all see you. So first is CJ, is it Buser? Yep. Yes, thank you, from Ofuskie. And also we have Jeremy, is it Bussey? Bussey from Cato, thank you. We've also got Joy Taylor from Craig. Where's Joy? There you are, okay. And let's see. 2 more. Luann Wood from Garvin, right here, Luann. And then, is it Keith Custer? Yes. Okay, thank you, Keith. And you are at, is it? Turpin. Oh, okay, got it. Turpin, thank you. Glad you're here. Thank you very much, each one of you. Thank you for your service and the work that you're doing as new leaders in districts. Thank you very much. All right, thank you. Now, okay. Was there any new superintendent, first-year superintendent I didn't recognize? We do want to make sure. Yes, we have 2. Okay, we do need you in just a little bit at the break to sign this, so we have that record. Could you introduce yourself?
Dr. Sylvia McNeely from Lawrence.
Wonderful, thank you so much.
I'm Dr. Terry McCarty with Perry Schools.
Wonderful, thank you very much for being here. All right, excellent. All right, so board members, now we're on item 4. It is an action item, discussion and possible action on the minutes of the December 19th, 2017 regular board meeting.
Second.
Do you have a comment?
I would amend on page 1 the Robert Ross. Did you read this? I amend that Robert Ross was not present.
Can't remember.
She's correct. All right, so with that amendment, is there
Skyped in.
any other comment or question? Virtual doesn't count.
I think you were here.
I can't remember. When was our last meeting?
December 19th.
Oh, I was gone that day.
Yep.
I do. I was driving to Colorado.
Very good. All right, so let's call the roll. No, I'm sorry, excuse me. Make sure we've done this properly.
Wait a second.
We got a second after that. Okay, very good. All right, you may call the roll.
Ms. Franks?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Abstain.
Mr. Keating?
Yes.
Mr. Price? Superintendent Hoffman?
Yes. All right, motion carries. Board members, we do not have anyone signed up.
Presents or non-presents, it's at least noted.
I guess it doesn't really matter.
Okay, we have no one signed up for
Always
public comment, so we will move to the consent docket, item 6. Let's see, turn that. All right, board members, any motion or,
Move approval.
okay? Any second for this?
Second.
And then discussion or questions? All right, seeing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Keating?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Ms. Franks?
Yes.
Superintendent Hoffmeister?
Yes, thank you, motion carries. Okay, all right, very good. Say, 1 moment, just a second. Kind of like that. Okay, all right. Board members, on item 7, we have discussion and possible action on petitions submitted by school districts to add the Success with OAS Mathematics grades 1 through 7, the textbooks to the approved book list selected by the State Textbook Committee. So what I'm going to do is there are 11 districts consideration, and this is, I would like to call the superintendent from Flower Mound and from Atchley as well. All right. Okay, very good. You can just you can come to the podium. Thank you. All right.
I appreciate you letting us speak on behalf of Alpha Plus. We actually, by the way, is south of Durant and Bryan County, and when we took the job 8 years ago, our school academically was failing. We were in the tank big time, and really didn't know what to do. And one day, somebody from Alpha Plus walked in, sat down in front of my desk, and sales deal. And anyway, real long story short, we were desperate, and we hired them on to help us. And to tell you the rest of the story, our high schools had A on the state report cards the last 5 years, I believe, 4 years, I know. And our elementary's made big improvements, and they're good with what they do. We're here today because the textbook committee, I think back in November, adopted the 8th grade in terms of Alpha Plus, but not grades 1 through 7. And we would request that you take a look at that. They're good. It would be beneficial to us and the other districts that use Alpha Plus and anyone else that uses Alpha Plus. They are in Oklahoma, which I think is a big deal, and they do a great job. but if you could look at that, we would appreciate it, and hopefully we'll be able to use them and have a little cost savings and everything by you guys adopting them with grades 1 through 7. Thanks.
All right, and would you state your name, though, for the
I'm
record,
sorry,
so we
Rick
can add
Bean,
that?
and I'm the superintendent at Atchley
Thank
in
you.
Bryan County.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me today, Ms. Hoffmeister, the job you do and the board. Thank you for our children. To kind of piggyback off Rick said, my name's Dax Trent. I'm the superintendent and principal at Flower Mound School. We're a dependent district down there outside of Lawton. A few years before I got there as the administrator at that school district, they had brought on Alpha Plus as the same reasons Rick did, just looking for an answer to improve the academic performance of their students. And the year I got there, we were actually designated as the 2015 National Blue Ribbon School. And I can attribute a lot of that to the program and the protocol of that Alpha Plus framework that really just focused our students on what it is to know. And the one thing I would say to you guys that make this decision is before we would go get textbook adoptions and still available on manufacturers that were in Massachusetts or Virginia. And we'd get a 650-page textbook, which was full of a great amount of information, and still great information, I'm sure, but it's not Oklahoma specific. And I think with the advancement of our standards and the changes in our what we're asking of our children, we're also asking that of our teachers. And I think by giving them a template that is specific to what our students need, I think that's where we made the change. And where we made that improvement was that we were teaching our kids what you guys and the state legislature designated them to learn for our state. And they came out with a math framework with their curriculum that was approved for the 8th grade, but it's the same system pretty much any grade that's available. And what we do, just real quick, what our teachers are able to do with it is they're able to teach more, because they have programs and they have these reports, standards-based, specific reports, spiral reviews, so our kids, when they learn something in September and they're tested on it in April, they're getting it in October and November and December. And so there's no loss of understanding of that skill or that specific standard. And so I think it's important that you look at those values, because it's continuous teaching and it's content specific and it's state specific. The examples are state specific. And our kids, I mean, history is important, but if you're talking about, something with science and you get to use something that's here in the state of Oklahoma that they've been to with their family as an example, I think that it engages them more. So it's been a great benefit to us. I know that right now we're not mandated, with textbook money. We will still purchase Alpha Plus as our curriculum, and as they grow and expand, because they'll grow into other subjects, we'll stay with it until our results aren't what they are, which we were a high B. Our 5th grade, just to give you this information, last year with the elevated standards and with the elevated goal lines, our 5th grade, we had the 5th grade math curriculum, and our 5th grade was the 3rd highest 5th grade out of 1,694 5th grades in the state of Oklahoma. To me, that speaks volumes of the content. Got a great teacher. I got 15 great teachers. It's like a house. If you got these pretty walls and these pretty decorations, if your foundation ain't very good, it's going to crumble. And so if we can give them that foundation and that fine-tuned specific focus on those early skills, I think it's what it does for us. So thank you for your time. You have any questions?
Yes.
It's a no-brainer to approve something the textbook committee is for and school districts are for. What's the reason for, it sounds like you're using the textbooks already. Mm-hmm. What's the reason for the approval of the board?
Well, and I think it goes down to this. It's right now, we kind of have that formula money and we kind of use it to go get the resources we need. It's kind of opened up. But if it ever goes back to specific, this is the approved list from the State Board of Education, these things you can spend your textbook money on.
I see.
We want to be able to spend, if we're in it for the children, you're going to get the best thing for them, and we are. And so we want to be able to account that money towards credit, because it's what's benefiting our children the most. I'm not saying the the other stuff being great. And I think it's up to every district's choice. But I think that we're just preparing in case there's a requirement that those count because they're very effective.
I move approval.
Second.
All right.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank y'all.
There's a motion and a second. Any further comments or questions or discussion?
You know, it's hard to take something away that's successful, so, I
Absolutely.
mean,
Exactly.
itself,
Thank you. All right, board, let's call the roll and
Ms. Franks?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Keating?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Superintendent Hoffmeister?
yes. Thank you. Motion carries. Next, we have item 8A, presentation of the 2016-17 Oklahoma School Testing Program results. So I know Dr. Janine Barnett, who is the deputy over assessment and accountability, is now going to present this report to you. Thank you. And this is for information only.
Honorable members of the board and Superintendent Hoffmeister, thank you for the time today to share the 2017 results from our state assessments. This is a report, the same kind of report that is given to the board annually. Before I go into the actual results, I do want to applaud our assessment department and the hard work that has gone into this past year. We had the major standard setting that took place in 18 different subject areas and grade levels, which was a huge undertaking. And then at the end of this past year, our assessment office responded to the United States Department of Education requirement for peer review to make sure that our assessments are doing what they're supposed to under the federal law. Early January, our agency submitted over 7,000 pages of documentation to the State Department of Education. So it was a huge undertaking, and we await results from that. If you'll remember, based on the board approval in December of 2016, we had new assessment requirements that went to the legislature and were passed through the House Joint Resolution 1028. So I want to remind you that this year is a total reset in the Oklahoma School Testing Program. That's a new name that has been adopted for the program, and because it's all brand new, there will not be trend data as we review our assessment results. We also have the Oklahoma Alternate Assessment Program, and that's for our 1% of students who have the most severe disabilities. So in 2017, Oklahoma students took exams in the areas that are represented here, in English, language, art, and math in grades 3 through 8 and 10, and in science in 5th, 8th, and 10th grade and U.S. history as is indicated. This next slide shows you the number of students at each grade level who participated in the Oklahoma School Testing Program. And then this is just a reminder once again that there is no possible comparison to prior years, so you won't be seeing a trend data again. 2017 will serve as the baseline year for all of our future assessment results that we have.
Can you pause just a moment on that slide? I know we're moving very quickly through these slides. Would you please share the significance of the numbers below those scale scores?
Absolutely. And so as we had the new standards and new assessments, we also worked with the psychometricians at Measured Progress, our testing vendor, as well as with our Oklahoma Technical Advisory Committee to review what would be the best scale score that would represent these our assessments. In the past, for the Oklahoma core curriculum tests, the scale score was 400 to 990, but you'll notice that the scale has been compressed somewhat, and it now will be represented through 200 to 399. And if you remember, the scale score is created so that when we have different forms of assessments going on across the state, we can pull it to the same scale and have comparability. But this is extremely important, and I appreciate Superintendent pointing it out, because the scale score is now how we will be marking improvement for our students within the accountability system, which you'll hear about here in a bit.
So just to also further clarify some things, a test form, the differences in that would be similar to when you take the ACT, there are different versions of that test, so that not everyone has the identical test as they are seated. I don't know if you can share anything any more about that, but also you may want to use the example of the ACT to compare what we're already familiar with in terms of scale score.
Sure. And it's, for example, with the ACT and SAT right now, if districts are giving those assessments on the state assessment dates, and they have a window of 3 or 4 dates when they can give them, each of those days students will have it tests the same kind of content, but it's just a different form of test. So the questions aren't exactly identical. It's the same thing I did when I was an English teacher in high school to make sure that two students that may be sitting side by side don't share knowledge while they're working on the exam. And you know, the scale score for ACT is 1 to 36. And so it takes the numbers and pulls it down to a scale. And it's just like with the SAT, it's 400 to 800.
Okay. All right.
Any
Thank
questions
you.
or anything further? So with these changes, we now have a truly nationally comparable measure. This is in response to those requirements in House Bill 3218 that indicates that students are on track to be career, college, and life ready. This slide identifies the performance of our students in English language arts. And I know those of you who have been on the board for a while, you'll see that the scores the state average scale scores look different than they have been in the past. And that's because, if you'll remember, as a part of our total reset, we started with the end goal of students being able to demonstrate proficiency on the ACT or the SAT to demonstrate that career and life readiness. So if we start with that as our end goal in the 11th grade, we then design backwards and had checkpoints with the NAEP assessment at the 8th grade level and again at the 4th grade level to ensure that national comparability that lets us know if kids are on track to be ready for that ACT or SAT when they get into the 11th grade. In the English language arts, I think it's important to note that in the past we had a separate writing test, but now in the standards, writing is integrated at every grade level in each of the standards, and so writing is also integrated in the assessments. There are students do still take a writing prompt as a part of that English language arts assessment in the 5th grade and 8th grade, but it's not a separate score. In the English language arts, I did want to share a few bright spots, and if you see the yellow bar, that is our state scale score average, and this is looking at our students who are English learners or English language learners. And what's important to note, as you look at the yellow bar, that's our state scale score, you see that very first light blue bar indicates students who are still receiving English language learner services. So they're still being served to improve their language proficiency. Once they reach proficiency, that's that second blue bar that you see. So they have achieved proficiency on the WIDA exam, which is used for assessing English learners, and this is their first year after they've achieved proficiency. And then this third blue bar shows 2 years after they've been out of the program. And so I think that you can see the importance of having good, solid services provided for our English learners at a very early level. Early intervention matters. And you can see they're actually outperforming our other kids.
Is this a new capacity, or is it, because you're taking that down and you're evaluating them as they go, and so is that a new, I've never seen that scale before, is that something new that because of software or something like that, how we monitor it?
We had been tracking it in the past through our federal programs, but now that the English learner proficiency assessment is a part of the accountability system that we provide to the feds, we are starting to track them over, and it'll be up to 4 years. We'll track students up to 4 years once they've exited the program and what their performance is. So yes, that is a new
That's very good.
feature.
Yeah. So I think it's just worth just continuing to highlight this. So the yellow column represents all students, not just the English learner in the state of Oklahoma in that grade level and subject. So you can see then that 2 years in third grade of instruction for the English learner, they are outperforming. The English learner originally is actually outperforming the average in the state on that state assessment for third grade reading. That's very exciting news, actually.
Well, except for the average, it's not that
Yes.
exciting.
That's right.
Can we give this instruction to everyone?
There is
And I-
work to be done.
And what's interesting that, I think you, Board Member Franks brings up a great point. What's different is this individual attention and support. And you see what happens when students receive that. Very good. Thank you.
The next slide looks at our math proficiency, starting there in the grade 3. You can see that we are at 44% proficient in grade 3. And we will continue to monitor the data over the next few years, of course. But just looking at our very first year, it tells a story perhaps that we need to be looking in 8th grade at what we're doing and in middle school in general. And I know that Levi Patrick, who had been over secondary math, had been working on that as well.
Is the abysmal scores, especially in the later grades, because we raise the standards?
There is an increased expectation, yes. So there is that, but there's also the important sequencing and building of standards. And so for the very first time, as you know, we have a vertical articulation from pre-K through 12th grade of our standards. And so the hope is, as it builds, and we have these integrated standards that are articulated, that it'll be reflected later on. But it just takes some time.
So just, excuse me.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that I think that's very important, and the impact is something that we are excited to see what occurs year after year, because Oklahoma's never had that. We've never had vertically articulated standards pre-K all the way through 12th grade. So we believe this is one key component in raising academic performance for students, because it also allows us to ensure that instructional gaps aren't present, and that as students are progressing, we are building momentum and learning for the long run. That's the whole goal behind vertically articulated standards that are high.
Now, these new standards have greater comparability with other states. Have you done some comparison with other states?
The main comparison that we did was with NAEP and ACT and SAT. We did use, like for the math standards, we did look at Michigan and Massachusetts when they were writing the standards. And Dr. Costa's here, she's over that. If there's some states that I've missed, she might could indicate that.
one would be Minnesota.
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 Not on the standards, but on the assessments, on the proficiency percentage.
Well, so ACT or SAT is the college bar for readiness without a benchmark that can be reached is our goal that would not require the need for remediation after high school. And so then that is the top goal, and the cut scores cascade from that point all the way down to each of those grade levels down to third grade. So they are aligned, and we are able to use fourth grade and eighth grade, which are the only 2 years Oklahoma uses the NAEP and when those are given nationally, as kind of an anchor point or a checkpoint to ensure that that vertical articulation to the ACT or SAT college readiness is established. And so we've been able to do that. These results are very similar to what we see in our results in fourth and eighth grade on NAEP and they align with what we see as well on the ACT. For example, you see 8th grade math at 22% proficient in 8th grade, and in math on the ACT, the benchmark is, well, excuse me, only 25% reach proficiency. Or reach the benchmark. So that's very similar to what we see later when they're taking that in 11th. Also, the SAT, only 23% of Oklahoma students that took SAT hit that benchmark for readiness in math. So these align with that, and we think it gives a more clear picture earlier so that we have strategies early and are able to close those gaps before they are larger.
What have we done an analysis of why we're deficient in those areas?
Yes.
And is it lack of students taking the proper course to align with that? Is that the major cause, or have we? What do we learn from the analysis of that?
Well, it's many things. So it starts with academic standards, and then it is about how you are assessing those standards. It's also how we establish the what we call a cut score or performance standards about that, which we're referring to now. But it also has to do with what we are doing to ensure that students are learning the standards. So an example with the English learner, they need support, they need that assistance and more of an individualized approach, and that is something that we're able to see the fruit from that. We know that this requires a teacher. And when we are working in a state with a severe teacher shortage, where we have many people who have stepped forward to be alternatively certified or emergency certified, we know that they don't possess on day one what perhaps a seasoned teacher in a particular field already has and knows. And so it's also about early identification where struggle exists that needs to be addressed. So it's many factors, but we absolutely have an evidence-based plan that we know we are on the right track. The frustration is when you know what to do, but you don't have the resources, either in people or in funds, to do that. And so we are on the right path. We are absolutely confident of that.
But that speaks to measurement. But when it gets down to the student level, what are we doing to make sure that they do reach that benchmark and exceed that benchmark? The benchmark is just an average, is it not?
So the benchmark is, this is going to get, I don't want to say something that's not correct. So I'll let.
Yeah, the benchmark would be proficiency, which is set at the 50th percentile, and Monica's going to get into that in a bit. But I think it starts with that really important, what we call Tier 1. If you do the Tier 3 intervention, we call the Tier 1 intervention, which is to have a solid core curriculum. And unfortunately, I mean, this year will be the year to adopt math textbooks, and you all know textbooks haven't been funded for several years, or the funding has been allowed to be used in creative ways, and I admit as a superintendent I did that as well. So there are some schools that haven't purchased textbooks in over a dozen years. And so you would think math is math is math, and yet now that we're asking students to do more complex assessments, it takes a different approach. And so there's definitely a need for that core curriculum that's the basis. The second one is what you're getting to, which are the interventions, where you do the diagnostic assessment, see where kids are, and then have very specific interventions that you use at that level. So yes, there's much work to be done, and I think it's so important this year that we work on getting the textbook funding, because math textbooks are up for adoption.
The part of this that I love is we raised the standards, we made it more truthful, and we made it more comparable with other states. All three of those things should spur us to action. The thing that is being raised is, you know, the spurring to action depends on being able to delineate all the each component of what is going to improve the system. And assessments are good for several things. One is to spur us to action, but secondly is to figure out all the different components and try to improve it. And resources is one, but also there's other components, and maybe we can creatively try to figure out all the different components in a comparison of different schools and different tactics and everything else, and look at other states. I'd like to look at a comparison. 22% of our kids proficient in math is a disturbing number.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And there ought to be some methodology beyond just resources to make that turn around.
There is much work to do, and our Curriculum and Instruction Office has put together the curriculum frameworks, which is a great resource for our schools, and are doing professional development looking at this new approach to teaching math that really focuses on a growth mindset. You know, it's not that you're either good at math or you're not. It's about learning to grow as a math student and as a math teacher.
Math is a universal language, and that is the case. Are our students fluent in that language? Are they? It's very similar to learning to play music or learning to play the piano, and it takes practice, it takes time. You can't simply, if we stick with that piano analysis, there's a point where you're learning your keys. There is a time when you have to look at what you're doing, then later you have internalized the language of math so that you can put any piece of music in front of that student and they can read that music and then later create and compose in that language. That music is a universal language just like math. This is the future of having students able to step into the world of STEM. And we know that computer science standards are coming here as well, and we are mindful of a strong, solid foundation in mathematics is essential. So one more thing I'd like to mention here. In the past, it's not just some of those things that we've talked about with tiered intervention, but it is also about a philosophy that will move students to have a deeper foundation, which will also change how we approach this. So when you think about the past end of instruction tests, where they were really the capstone of how we measured readiness, in the past, 7 of those were required to graduate from high school. You had to pass 4 of the 7, and certain of those were required. But we had 3 that were math. They were Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. And we still saw that only 25% of our students were able to reach the benchmark of readiness on the ACT. And so this is a different approach than saying to schools and teachers, we're going to focus on this one class, and then we're going to test right at the end of it. Instead, it's an integrated approach. So now that ACT represents pre-algebra, it has Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, and a little trig. All of that has to be mastered. It has to be internalized so that they can use it in post-secondary. And that's a very different thing than asking our schools to focus on a course, and then I think we've given permission to forget by doing that. So that is gone. We've changed the law. Now it's about let's just use that tool that we also know brings scholarship opportunities to students. Many of our students weren't taking, out of 44,000 juniors, 22,000 were taking it, but 22,000 had the door closed for opportunities for concurrent enrollment in the 12th grade, etc. So I think that it is a lot about big picture planning. And what's occurred in the last 3 years is setting the stage for a removal of past legislation that embedded some of this into the structure of how we educate and claim readiness. And now I think the stage is set for our students to really have meaningful outcomes and games and increased readiness for life.
See, one of the analysis that would be really beneficial would be if there was a breakdown, let's say, of textbooks. You know, what the proficiency level in different textbooks are. If there's one that we just heard about, A plus alpha. I have no idea if A plus alpha is great or not so good. But if it's great and there's 40% proficiency, then that's good to spread to other districts. And those kind of breakdowns of textbooks, and I'm sure there's 5 other areas, can really motivate districts to in directions that may improve their performance. And again, I commend, I think before the standards were low, and that kind of lulled us into inaction, and I commend the superintendent for raising those standards and making it so that we're motivated to do something about it. But I think that by breaking down some of these numbers and maybe going into the weeds a little bit more, we might come up with the reasons why some districts are doing better than others, and might help districts figure out a methodology or a textbook or whatever it is that might help them. Anyway, that's a thought on the next time we look at this.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I would be very interested in seeing this next year when we have, when we can compare. I think
Yes.
it will be very important to see if these numbers remain as they progress, as the students move through the grades.
And a comparison of other states
And
could be
improve.
real beneficial too, because now that we've got comparability numbers, we can look at things, analysis of styles and techniques and textbooks and everything else of different states and what their proficiency numbers are. And analysis of that could be very beneficial to not only to the board but to disseminate to school districts.
Sure, absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you.
The next slide talks about our proficiency in science, and you remember we take, our students take assessments in science in grades 5 and 8, and last year it was in grade 10. Those students who had a valid 2016 end of instruction exam were exempt from that grade 10 assessment this past year. Oklahoma has moved to 3-dimensional science standards, and the assessments reflect that. And actually, we have other states calling us wanting to know, because we were one of the first states to develop those 3-dimensional items on our assessments, and they're calling to find out what we did, how we did it, and perhaps even to buy or lease some of our items, which is exciting.
Let me ask about this grade 10. So if a student in the 9th grade had passed the EOI for biology,
That's correct.
they were exempt.
Right.
For
So
this
that's
one
why
year.
this number is
Yes.
so
That's
low.
right,
So
for this
that's
one year.
skewed the number.
Exactly.
It absolutely.
That's
Yeah,
important to
it
point
is very
that out.
important. And in the future, our science assessment will not just be life science with biology. It will be integrated physical and life.
So all the good students were exempt.
The ones who already passed
Yeah, that already passed it.
weren't included in that number.
So, yeah, accelerated students had an opportunity to already have that course before 10th grade.
Now,
And-
that's not as true of the U.S. history results.
No, and these are our U.S. history results from last year.
That's kind of
And
disturbing.
this is an assessment tool that's being revised. It needed that. It is, had been neglected due to the item development that's required, which is very costly. This is one of our most expensive tests to give. And so that is under current development right now.
And
as
it's
those
the
standards.
only assessment that was an end of instruction assessment that still exists in that form. The new standards for social studies will be presented to the legislature, to the board, and then to the legislature in 2019. So U.S. history is kind of in a in-between stage, if you will, in that area.
Were the standards raised on this?
That's what we're doing at the moment, right now.
Were they raised
No.
for this?
No, no.
So they went down in
Yes.
Every
real
year.
terms from 14 to 17, big time.
Yes.
That's disturbing.
Very disturbing.
Was U.S. history just not taught?
I think that it's one of the old assessments that was left from end of instruction, and what we're looking at right now is moving to looking at options. We're piloting different options this next year and looking at more perhaps of project-based performance for citizenship and U.S. history. There's some thought that that might be more reflective of what students do, that civic engagement piece, and so we're looking at different options with the assessment right now because it needs to be updated and improved.
And it's also very narrowly focused right now. I believe it's 1866 to 1990 is all that it covers. It needs to be far more comprehensive and
It needs
integrated.
to start at the beginning of the founding of the country.
And even earlier. Yes.
That's what I'm saying is the founding of
Yeah,
the colonies.
exactly. Sure. You're right.
So the implementation of our new standards and new assessment, as Superintendent Hoffmeister said earlier, has been very thoughtful and methodical as we work to build a system in support of the 8-year plan. And I bring that up just because I think it's very important for us all to understand that we are at the beginning with baseline information, and it's going to be important to be patient, as Board Member Frakes pointed out, to see how kids do the next year and even the third year, because you really need 3 years of data before you can actually see if there are any trends that are occurring. And so we just ask for patience from, and we've seen that from our teachers and school leaders as we implement, and as we work to achieve academic success and create engaged communities. A couple of new things that are coming that we're really excited about that I think will help create that engagement with families and with students. This year we will be providing information to students and families that comes from a system that's called the EVAS system. It's EVAAS, that's just the vendor name, but what it provides are student success summaries that identifies where students are performing and then provides a trajectory of if they stay on track from where they are right now, will they be able to reach the ACT or SAT benchmark? Will they be ready for AP? Or if they start at this point right now, what else do they need to do so that they can jump up a little bit and be ready to make that. So the predictive analytics in that and the trajectories that will be provided for students, I think is something that's very exciting.
We think this is a very important tool for educators, but also for families. If you remember the ABCs of those pillars: achieve academic success, build exceptional educators in schools, create engaged communities. This is part of that. We think it's very important to put in the hands of families and communities, and most importantly, schools, so that they are able to really hone in on those areas of needed support early, and having a way to use predictive analytics to project that path as it exists right now for that student will really help give useful and meaningful information to schools and communities. Yes,
And
sir.
will this be universal in all our school systems?
All our public schools, yes.
That's great. Even in poor neighborhoods, almost everybody has a smartphone. It's amazing, and it can really,
That's right.
Yes, sir.
it's really been successful.
Today, can you earn a high school diploma without ever taking U.S. history?
No, it's
No, that is a
requirement.
graduation requirement.
but is it only from 1860 on?
No, it's, that's just the high school piece of it. The history in social studies is very broad, and there are certain things that happen at different grade levels to complete that full social studies standard for the state. So that is a conversation we will be bringing to you as that work continues and moves on. Brenda Chapman is leading that work and effort and is working with those that have the expertise across the state. They are passionate about social studies.
But it ought to be tested for the full length of time, not just from 1860 on.
Our goal, we agree. We agree you're speaking specific to high school. I was just describing the narrow focus of the old EOIs. So that's what you were looking at on that.
And then in 2019, we have the Family Parent Mobile application that will come and will interface with the student success stories, and they'll also be able to look at their students' performance over time and have that trend data.
There will also be comparable tools that will be open for the public, but the school leaders that we have been showing this to are very excited because there will be many ways to look at this data. I think in the next presentation you're going to hear some more about that. One thing I do want to reinforce for any of our legislators who might be able to understand and support the need for the textbooks. There was a comment made by Dr. Barnett about some schools have not had math textbooks for 12 to 13 years. It's important to note that this is on a 6-year cycle. You miss the cycle, you miss the statewide contract opportunity. And so this is why that matters. Schools cannot just have the same it is in a statewide contract that we are able to get the best use of funds. And it is also done at a particular interval. So that's reviewed, revisited, revised, each of those academic standards on a 6-year cycle. And once one is off cycle, then you really have a domino effect, and you miss the cycle if you are unable to make those purchases at that time. Because this wasn't funded, we did a pause year. We're only allowed under the Constitution to do that once, and then this is the year we have to have that. It's going to cost $58 million, and it is very critical that our schools have this. They knew way back when there was even conversations, if you remember, Common Core was being discussed long time back, 6 years ago or more. And so schools had waited to make the purchase until those standards were finished, then those were repealed, and now we have new standards. This is part of the explanation why it has been so long that schools have not had this opportunity. So just to put that in context.
Do you want to introduce the next
Sure.
agenda item, or do you want me? And then
All
I'll
right,
introduce
so
the-
now, board members, we'll move to item 8B, which dovetails with assessment, but this is about school accountability. Discussion and possible action in the recommended grade level and subject area interim targets for the measure of status in the statewide multi-measured accountability system. And I know that Dr. Janine Barnett will make her introduction with part of her team.
This presentation reflects the same layout of the presentation that you all saw with Dr. Mary Ann Perry in December of 2016, and it was created in consultation with her. I am really excited to introduce a couple of members on our accountability team. Dr. Michael Tamborski has been leading that team for over 5 years now, almost 5 years. I knew that he was at a mark. And then the presenter that will go over the information with you today is a new member of our team, but who is doing a fantastic job. She taught in Colorado, spent some time in England, and has come back now with her husband at Tinker Air Force Base, and we're really pleased to have Monica Daniels with us, and she'll be presenting the accountability report.
Well, thank you to the honorable members of the State Board and Superintendent Hoffmeister for having me today. As Dr. Barnett said, my name is Monica Daniels, and I am the Assistant Executive Director of Accountability, and it's my pleasure today to go over the updates to the new accountability system. I thought it best to begin today by going over a slide that you've seen previously. This is a look back at the goals for Oklahoma schools. This highlights the guiding principle that we have for the new accountability model, which is that all schools can improve and all kids can grow. As a reminder, our focus is on college and career readiness, and that is that all students should graduate high school prepared for college and/or the workplace. In that same vein, we want to make sure that early on in grades 3 through 8, students are demonstrating the knowledge and skills to be on track toward that goal. So we'll begin with a look back to last year and some of the communications that we had with our community partners. So if you look at each of these events, the number in front of the event is the approximate number of participants that engaged with us in conversations on this new accountability model. I think this slide really highlights the fact that we have a really diverse group of partners, from business and industry leaders to tribal leaders, school leaders, districts, educators, and community partners involved in these conversations with us. Additionally, Oklahoma has earned some national recognition last year from third-party reviewers. The Fordham Foundation conducted a review of all 51 state ESSA plans, including Washington, D.C., and awarded only 7 perfect scores, including Oklahoma. They stated this about Oklahoma. They said, Oklahoma proves that when states are empowered to lead on education, the needs of students and their families are put first. Oklahoma's accountability system is clear, fair, and signals that all kids count. Here's hoping that other states follow its lead. An additional review was conducted by Bellwether, and they also provided praise to Oklahoma. They stated that Oklahoma has sought to make itself a leader by trying new accountability measures that other states have not yet implemented, with the aim of developing a system that holds schools accountable for the performance of all students, and that they felt that the system is clear and easy for stakeholders to understand. So now that we've taken a look back, we thought it would be best to look forward. You have this timeline in front of you, and it outlines the journey ahead. This timeline highlights the milestones and steps necessary to issue a valid and reliable report card in December of 2018. As you can see, there are many moving parts to this timeline. With a true multi-measures model, as we have multiple data collection requirements. So this timeline seeks to outline when we expect to receive, review, and validate the data, which will be used for the final report card calculations. Please note that these dates are subject to change. There are external factors such as delays in receiving final reports from testing vendors that may shift some of our projected dates.
That hasn't happened, so I just want you to be aware that that's not expected. We have had a great track record as we are working with the same vendor that has been on time with all their reports. Thanks.
Okay, so as you may recall, this is the overview of the Oklahoma State Accountability System. This provides all of the indicators and their weights for elementary, middle, and high schools. And we'll spend the next several slides going over these indicators in greater detail. So Oklahoma has employed a Technical Advisory Committee, or OTAC, to review, validate, and advise our policies and procedures in accountability. You actually have a document in front of you that has the bios for our TAC members, but this panel is comprised of experts in the field, so you'll be able to see their extensive credentials on that page. Due to the availability of assessment data last year, the TAC convened in December of 2017 to review academic achievement status methodologies, as was planned and outlined in our ESSA plan. Based on their review, they made the following recommendations, and we will explore these recommendations further in the next slides. So as you may recall, Oklahoma is using priority student grouping for its academic achievement status indicator. This method counts students only once for the purposes of calculation based on their demographic most closely correlated with academic achievement. Using multiple regression analyses and based on the recommendation of the OTAC, the order of the student groups mirrors the strength of relationship with academic performance. As a reminder, Oklahoma will be employing multiple layers of examination for student performance. We will be using priority grouping for academic achievement status calculations, and that will unmask hidden trends and ensure equity in that no student will count more than another. However, we will also be including traditional reporting methods for TSI, or targeted support and improvement identification. So we'll now go over some specifics on indicator calculations. Baselines were set using the 2017 testing data. The TAC felt it most appropriate to use the 50th percentile or the median score as the baseline or starting point. Growth targets were then set to ensure that yearly progress is both statistically meaningful and significant. Student groups were required to meet an interim target of 300, which is the proficiency cut score, by 2025, with the exception of the students with disability group, which had their trajectory extended to 2030. Once the target is at 300 or proficiency, the target would remain at 300 with the focus on increasing the percentage of students meeting their target.
And feel free to stop or pause if you have any thought or question. Yes.
I've got a question that may be outside the scope of her presentation, but we've adopted these standards, but we haven't looked. There's a standard as far as allocation of funds within the state formula. Have we ever tried to match these standards and see what the allocation would look like on state funds? Because the way state funds are allocated, it's not one-to-one, it's one to a certain disadvantage that was put in 15 years ago. Well, 15 years ago, it wasn't working, and now we're in a new environment, and we looked and tried to match and say, well, that allocation was this, but it should be X, but it should be Y. And have we looked at that recently?
The State Aid Task Force is a commission that, or I guess it's not a commission, it's a task force that the legislature passed last year and has been established, and that has been meeting to look at those weights that you describe right now. I am a member of that. There are appointees from the governor's office. It is co-chaired by the Secretary of Education as well as the Senate Chair of Education, Chairman Stanislawski. There are a variety of people that are appointed to that, and so that is the focus about efficiency, effectiveness, and then the conversation around updating weights. It has been discussed, and I think that we will likely see even some aligning with new federal description or weights as well. So I think that you bring up a great point. We want to make sure that we're staying current with the needs. Mm-hmm.
So continuing on with the methodology, by ensuring that each student has an ambitious and attainable target, we allow every student to contribute to this overall indicator. Students will earn 1 point for meeting their target and may receive an additional quarter point if they exceed their target by the next performance level, so for example, advanced. And this provides incentive for schools to continue working with students that are already at their target. The overall indicator points will be based on the percentage of students meeting their target. Over time, this rubric will be reviewed and potentially modified to increase with rigor. So now we're going to review some of the other indicators that have all been previously presented to the board. As a reminder, our additional academic indicator for elementary and middle schools is student academic growth. As a growth indicator requires 2 years of data, we will need to wait until the April 2018 testing results in order to finalize this indicator. As you may recall, we will be using a value table to award growth for growth across the scale, not just to proficiency. We anticipate presenting these growth value tables to the board in September of this year.
So just to refresh your memory about those, what that does is it focuses on all students instead of only students that are right on the verge of tipping into a different performance band. And so we want the focus again to be about all students growing, and whether that is a student who is already advanced or one who has significant deficits. So there is a value or weight attached to that work that our schools are doing, or that we want to incentivize them to do for more students.
So we also have the English Language Proficiency Assessments, or ELPA indicator. This is included for all schools with 10 or more enrolled English language learners. This indicator uses the WIDA assessments, which are the English language assessments, and they're taken in early spring of every year. It uses those assessments to determine whether or not students are on track for an on-time exit from their English language program. We are very privileged to have Dr. Gary Cook, who is a nationally recognized leading researcher and advisor on English language learner policy and assessment, as a member of our OTAC. So he has actually provided us with the methodology to set these targets and determine whether or not students are on track for a timely exit. As you may recall, our school quality indicator for all schools is chronic absenteeism. A student is considered chronically absent if he or she is absent for 10% or more of enrolled days. Chronic absenteeism has been linked to diminished academic outcomes, and we are one of 36 states that are including it in our accountability system. In an effort to ensure valid, reliable, and consistent attendance data, OSD has made attendance reporting guidance available to districts. And we will be providing an update on chronic absenteeism, particularly as it relates to House Bill 1693 next month. For high schools only, graduation rates will also be included in the new system. Oklahoma uses the federally required definition for four-year cohort rates. New for this system are the inclusion of 5- and 6-year rates. Previously, schools were given a disincentive to continue working with students who took longer than 4 years to graduate. This often affects our most underserved populations of students, particularly those with disabilities. So by providing credit to 5- and 6-year graduates, Oklahoma will reward the efforts of schools to work with all students.
And this also supports the civil right of a student with profound disabilities who needs to be in school until that last day when they turn 22. And we want to protect that right and make sure that schools are incentivized to do this.
In line with our college and career readiness focus is a second school quality indicator for high schools only, and that is post-secondary opportunities. Students will receive credit for successfully participating in any of the following: so advanced coursework through AP courses or the IB program, dual or concurrent enrollment, a career-based internship, or programs that lead to industry certification via Career Tech. As programs become more available, the goal will shift towards successful outcomes from participation. This transition will be presented and reviewed by the board. For this year's report card, schools will complete a post-secondary opportunities report in June of 2018. So just as important as developing this new system is ensuring the accessibility and meaning to its consumers. So this month we have conducted 4 focus groups to gather feedback as we build our new reporting platform. During these conversations, we've provided participants with 4 sample dashboards to review and kind of gather feedback and guide that conversation. One feature we most wanted to explore, as has already been discussed today, is that comparability between schools and districts. In addition to the comparability, we also are looking at drill-down capabilities of data because we want to ensure that these reports are meaningful to districts and to the public. So we've explored many options for visual analytics and have garnered feedback from our partners on what they find to be most valuable and meaningful. We have one additional focus group this month, and it will be on January 30th in Tulsa, and we warmly welcome the invitation to all board members if you're able to attend that. Once we've collected that feedback, we will continue development on the reporting dashboard. We anticipate a finalized concept for review in April of 2018. The final reporting dashboard will be launched in December of 2018 and will contain the school report cards to include those visual analytic elements that allow for those comparisons and meaningful outcomes. It will also include all ESSA required reporting and available contextual information. So to the honorable members of the State Board and Superintendent Hoffmeister, I again want to thank you for your time, and if you have any outstanding questions at this time, I'll answer them.
So the report card comes out this December?
December of 2018.
And it's based on what the previous school year?
It will have the 2018 testing results for academic achievement status, and then for academic growth, it will use the 2017 and the 2018 because many of our indicators require 2 years data, so it will use both the 17 and 18 data.
And then going forward, will we release the report card in December, or will we do it at the beginning of the year, or what?
Hopefully.
Would be the plan?
Historically, that has been presented to the board in the October board meeting. That would be our hope.
Yeah, it'd be good
of
to
course,
get it out as
early as possible.
So
That's
that
right.
they know how they did the previous year.
That's the goal. Absolutely.
Real time.
Yes. Board members, the request for motion is to accept the recommendations of the Oklahoma Technical Advisory Committee that met in December and made these proposals to you so that we can continue the work and meet these timelines. But we want to answer any of your questions if you have any additional questions.
One good thing about the achieving proficiency, at least at the lower grade levels, one of the worries that I and Robert Ruiz had was low expectations on economically disadvantaged and certain ethnic groups. And, you know, an 8-year timeline to achieve the same proficiency. And that is much shortened on these. Many times it's 2018 or 2019 or 2020 on the younger grade levels, so I'm glad to see that. On the higher grade levels on math, it's not quite as good, but it's that whole thing of lower expectations. We want to have high expectations for all ethnic groups and all people. So I commend. I think that takes away some of the problems that we had with the achievement standards. This shifts it more toward growth than achievement, which is fine and good. We've discussed also, I think it behooves the board to have, you know, and I've discussed this before, an historic analysis of districts, just because it can be helpful going forward on actions that should be done in districts or an analysis of districts and schools to know under previous systems if they've been an F for 7 years under numerous different systems, even though this one may be the best of all. It tells you something, and you were wonderful to talk about, you know, providing that at some point to the board. I think it's real beneficial going forward to do that, and but I commend the shortened time span to having every group have expectations within the norm rather quick, at least on the lower grade levels.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
All right, motion to approve in second. Any further comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
Ms. Franks?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Keating?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Superintendent Hoffmeister?
Yes, thank you very much. Motion carries. All right, board members, let me ask you, we are at 11 o'clock. We have some items. Yours will be quick, but I do think that we have some, I think a break, maybe. Board members, would you entertain a 5-6 minute break, or do you want to press forward? I do think that we have at least another hour. Okay, let's have a brief break at this moment. We'll take and adjourn the meeting for just a moment. We'll come out of recess
There's really an hour left, but
and
I didn't want you to know where I was going.
get ready for the rest here. Let's see here. Okay, board members, thank you again for the brief break. We are on item 9A. It's an action item, discussion and possible action for the OCAS late penalty for non-compliant school districts not meeting the September 1 submission deadline, and we'll ask Deputy Superintendent of Finance and Federal Programs, Matt Holder, to this.
Thank you, Superintendent. Honorable members of the board, come to you by statute and administrative code. Districts have to certify their OCAS data, which is the Oklahoma cost accounting system, in which they report their revenue and expenditures. Due to some various reasons here, as you have letters in front of you as well, we had 4 districts that did not meet that deadline of September 1st. Those were personnel changes or computer problems, very valid reasons for them not to have that in. They got it in as quick as possible. We're in communication with our staff. Would like to recommend that approval of these waivers for these penalties.
This is a greatly reduced number, isn't it? Usually there's a huge number of these people.
You may be getting confused with some of our federal programs.
Oh, okay.
But I wish I could say that.
This is not some great improvement. They still are deficient in the other area.
Well, not these 4 districts, but some others. So.
Yeah.
I think,
Okay. Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Yes. And we have a second. All right, any other comments? Okay, please call the roll.
Let me
Oh,
just ask,
excuse me.
Were any of these on last year?
No.
Good question. All right, please call the roll.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Keating?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Ms. Franks?
Yes.
Superintendent Hoffmeister?
Yes, all right, sorry for that. Motion carries. Now, we are on item 10. And we have Lori, who is coming to discuss rules.
Good morning, honorable members of the board. There are 3 rule changes under consideration today, and this is in keeping with our theme of updates to student assessment and school accountability. So I will give you a brief description of each of these 3 rule changes, and I'll take any questions you have as we go, and you can consider all these in one vote at the end. So the first is to Section 210, 1013-2, the rule on the Oklahoma School Testing Program, scope, and general administration. These are required updates due to changes in law. The school testing program rule is being amended to remove outdated references to end of instruction exams and the No Child Left Behind Act, with language updated to reflect the newer laws in effect. There's also some minor terminology changes because the rule refers to the State Department of Education Office of Assessment and Accountability, which is now 2 offices. So any questions about that rule change? Very basic and perfunctory.
Virtual district is called a quasi-district?
Yes, that change we are making because that is in reference to students who are in attendance at juvenile facilities or residential facilities. Their test scores go together in what used to be called a virtual district. Pardon the air quotes, but it's literally quotation marks in the rule. But now that there are virtual charter school districts that are referred to sometimes as virtual districts, that term has a different meaning. So quasi-district is the new term just to describe that one specific scenario of those students in certain facilities whose scores go together. Any other questions?
Thank you for that explanation.
The next rule, Section 210, 1013-18, this is the general Oklahoma School Accountability System rule. And this also makes several language updates to bring it in line with the new Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA. There are also a few instances where terms are updated to reflect changes to the internal structure of the State Department, as in Office of Assessments, Office of Accountability, being separate offices now. And we received 1 public comment on this rule from COSA, the Cooperative Council for Oklahoma School Administration, requesting some changes to clarify citations and some minor language adjustments. Those are reflected in the draft that you see before you, and you'll be voting on those included in this rule adjustment. Any questions about that section? Also some required changes. And the last, section 210, 1013, 22, implementation of a system of school improvement and accountability. This is the old A through F rule, which we are now required to revoke because the provisions of law that rule was based on have been superseded. So the rule is, by operation of law, no longer in effect. So that is a required change we make to keep the code in line with what is current in statute. So we will run a detailed replacement rule in the coming year. The guidance to school districts for this year will be based on, as Ms. Daniels presented to you, some of the guidance that is already being distributed to school districts, so they have clear expectations for accountability this year. Any questions about these, or in general?
All right, thank you. Does that conclude your presentation?
That does.
I make a motion we approve the rules changes.
Second.
All right, thank you. Motion to approve and second. Any comment or question? Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Keating?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Ms. Franks? Yes. Superintendent Hoffmeister?
Yes. All right, thank you very much. Now, item 11, I'll ask Brad Clark, the General Counsel for the State Board, to please address the board.
Thank you, Superintendent, honorable members of the board. As part of this board's contractual arrangement with the Office of Juvenile Affairs for the operation of Oklahoma Youth Academy, an annual report that reviews the school's board structure, financial situation, and academic performance is required. We have special guests here with us today, Melissa White and Letitia Sanchez, here to make that annual report.
And I would like to recognize in the audience Dr. Steve Buck, who has also now carrying a new role at the Department of Health, of course. We appreciate. Would you like to say, for just a moment, speak and address the group?
Thank you, Superintendent, honorable board members. Thank you for the indulgence of the Oklahoma Youth Academy Charter School. It is significantly changing lives and young people across the state every single day, and I look forward to the annual report that you will receive today, and am excited about what we will continue to do in the future as we work with this population. And thank you, Superintendent, for recognizing me. I have the honor of Secretary of Health and Human Services. Was recently appointed to that post, so it's an honor to do this work, and I appreciate your work on behalf of Oklahoma's young people as well.
Thank you. We appreciate your service.
Good morning, Superintendent, honorable board members. Thank you for this opportunity for us to report the success of Oklahoma Youth Academy Charter School. I do want to take just a brief second to let you guys know that we had a young gentleman that was going to come and express his experience at Oklahoma Youth Academy Charter School, and unfortunately we heard this morning that there was a family emergency that he was no longer able to attend. But I do have to share just a little short story about this gentleman. He just recently graduated from our Southwest campus, and I have to tell you that it was one of the most moving graduation ceremonies that I think anybody has been at, and if you ask some of our board members who were present, they would express the same. This kiddo did amazing work for us. He worked hard, he worked his treatment, and he was released. But I want you to know that at his graduation, there was several people that have worked with this kiddo that had reached out, and when he left, there were about 4 different opportunities for him to further his education in post-secondary opportunities, and it was really interesting because he was gung-ho about going and playing football, and he wanted to play football, and he was very athletic, and he's very smart, and one of our rec therapists that worked with him said he is a very talented athlete, and he can do football, but I tell you what, he can play football as well, and he had went and spoke to one of our prestigious universities here in Oklahoma City, and he had the opportunity to go meet with that coach and possibly be a walk-on at that facility and at that college. So I just want you guys to know that our kids are doing awesome work, and we really believe in the opportunities that are available. And there are about 700 people that are advocating for these guys to go out and to have opportunities once they leave our facility. But I wish he was here, because I tell you what, he was really entertaining to listen to and very articulate about his experiences and the opportunities that was given to him through our school. With that, I'll go ahead and go on with our annual report. One of the requirements is for me to discuss our governing board. I'm not going to go over every single member, but I do want you guys to be aware of who our board members are. And I think it's important to note that the majority of them have expertise in education, and if not, a history of advocacy in education. I love it because they keep me accountable, but they also are aware of how public schools run. So it's really awesome to have board members that understand and support. As far as finances, we did include in our report our annual financial report from Wilson, Dodson and Associates. That was dated back in March of 2017. If you have any questions about that, I would be more than willing to address any questions. Here is a breakdown of the different financial revenues that come into our district. I think it's important to note the contribution from the Office of Juvenile Affairs. If it wasn't for their belief in the importance of education and their monetary support, we wouldn't be able to offer what we offer our youth at our facility. With that, I want to talk about some of the successes. We do talk about the success of our facility quite often. And with that, we do have tours. We have people that are interested to see what we're offering and how we're able to offer what we are to the residents at our school. And with that, it comes a penny, right? It does cost. We've had several facilities and contractors that we contract with that are interested in what we're able to offer, and have asked for OJA to look into some language that could go over to legislation that would allow the expansion of the charter school into contracted facilities. So we are looking at an avenue or a vehicle to take that language over to the legislator this year.
I got one question on your federal funds. There's a significant increase of $290,000. Do you expect that to reoccur for 2018?
No, no, sir.
Then how are you making up for that reduction of $290,000 as we, or where did you replace those funds, or did you decrease your expenditures for 2018?
So our revenues changed, and a part of that was due to some of the special education funding that came through to us, different title monies, also neglected and delinquent. We had some other grant opportunities and things like that were able to help facilitate that income.
So you were able to replace that those funds this year?
Yeah, as far as we know, yes.
Okay. Okay, that's my question.
Okay. Here's our expenditures. And as far as student performance, I'd like to take this time to introduce our principal, Letitia Sanchez. I think it's very important for her to own the success of what's happening in the school, because she's there every day. So this is Letitia Sanchez.
Thank you. I always welcome the opportunity to be able to brag about our staff and our students, and so I was really honored when she had asked that I would come and present this today. If you look at our testing, we do have two sites. We have the SWOJEC, what we call SWOJEC, that is located in Manitou, and then of course COJEC is in Tecumseh. And so you can see the scores that we have there for ELA, math, and reading. Those scores are also looked upon, like you guys were talking about the discrepancies with regard to testing and the differences, but that is the best we can kind of compare, since we've got some different avenues there. But one of the things that we do with those testing is, and I heard some of that start a little earlier about RTI and using that data. We do use that data. We test quarterly, and in some cases a little more than that, for our purposes, and we ensure that we have tutoring and proper kinds of remediation for the boys as they need.
I'm sorry, going back one. It seems like the second one, that's Tecumseh, is it?
Yes.
is higher in every category. Is there a reason for that?
Well, it is. They have more kiddos there, and I really think that we had some issues with regard to testing. The company that had it that dropped them halfway, and so we had to start another one. So that was the best we could come up with. We have always run the same kind of program on both sites, and so we kind of question that as well. But it's there. I mean, we watch with the new system that we put in place. We watch it diligently and make sure that it's happening, tutoring on both sides or helping on both sides.
So you're not concerned about?
We're always concerned as far as that goes because we always hit it. Yeah, we always.
Choice on my part,
Yes.
You understand it? And
Yes,
you feel that's
yes, and we look at it carefully for that reason. Yes, ma'am.
I would also like to say that some of the data that I looked at when I was reviewing these slides as well is that it sounds kind of weird, but when looking at the data, that the kids that are serviced at the Southwest campus did test in lower than the kids at.
They entered at a lower
Yes,
level.
yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
well, that's very
So,
reasonable. And what are the numbers of students at each?
We have 60 currently at Swojak, and in Kojak we have beds of 74. Yeah, 70.
60 and 74. Okay, thank you.
We average probably, they probably come in reading at 5th grade level, most of them, if we would say an average of the boys coming in. We do have some as low as kindergarten, 1st grade level when they come in. And so we have actually, at Swojak, we started a program of RTI that we actually did in the elementary level. And we asked the gentleman if he wouldn't mind us doing these interventions just, to see if we could improve his reading. And it was so neat to see that it had actually worked. The interventions that I had done previously in elementary worked well, and he was so proud of himself, would go around wanting to read anything he could to anyone that would listen. And so he left us recently, and he still needed some credits, but he was just so happy that he was able to read that had not been accomplished before. So we do have some, really challenges in there, but at the same sense, I love the staff that I have that do take it as a challenge and know that they can, we find resources to be able to address those needs.
Thank
you. Again, the state assessment, those are the numbers of the students that participated. We do have ACT testing. Of course, that the state provides the testing, and we do that, but as well, we do our teachers do that on the weekend sometimes as well, depending on what the kiddos need. So you'll see those scores there. We have an open house and a teacher-parent conference. We have 2 open houses a year and also 2 parent-teacher conferences at each location. They are set at different dates so that I can attend both of them, since they are 150 miles apart from each other. But we do have, we do it at the same time that the juveniles are they've got some visitation, and so that it's easy for them and for the parent. In some cases, parents aren't able to come and visit every weekend, and we do send letters home to them in information that if they just want to come on a certain day, they can call us and we will go and meet with them and take them around the school and those kind of things. So we meet that way, and then we also have the ability to do telephone conferences, and we do have that a lot. A lot of our parents, since they are from far away from where the child is at, they just call in and we do a conference at any given time. So we make a lot of, we send flyers out to the parents as well to keep them abreast of what's going on with the school. Our last day of school is June 22nd. We have about 2 weeks off, and then we come back for training, and we hit the school run again for New Year. So there are 220 days that the students attend school. We have some students that are concurrently enrolled in college credits, and we're always looking for that. Even if kiddos graduate early, we look to maybe try to get some classes on post-secondary so that they can get used to some of that. We do have some dropouts, of course, when they leave us, whether they don't re-enroll back in school. So we make every effort to make them successful while we have them. Is that it? There it is. We also, that's the number of graduates that you will see for each site as well, since we started in 2015. And we also have GED recipients as well. So what happens when kiddos come in and they are very, their age is 17, 18, and have very low credits? What we do is put them in core subjects and make them understand that doing those core subjects will actually get them ready for a GED at some point if that is what needs to be done. We want them to be successful when they leave.
Okay, I'm going to intervene at this one as well. Just to go back to your earlier question about how Southwest looks a little bit different, I do want to emphasize that the GED opportunity was not as available at the Southwest office and campus at the first year, and we got it about January of last year. So working with Pearson and becoming a testing site took some process and some time. Now we would do what we could to test those kids if it would be to transport them to Oklahoma City or whatever, but it was readily available right there at the doorstep of Kojak prior to the charter school even being in existence. So it's a little unfair to see those stats, but if you look at it now, since the testing's been, it's pretty fair. So we didn't ever not allow it to happen. It just wasn't as available.
There's some pictures of some of our graduates. We do have graduates that once they're graduated, they still stay there at the facility. And so they either work there with the facility and learn how to do some of those jobs, job training is what we call it really for the kiddos, but we have some that are so good in a certain subject that they actually come back and help us with peer tutoring. So, and that's we know that's the best way to learn is to teach, right? So, we have an automotive service technology at Southwest Oklahoma, and it is aligned with Career Tech. Therefore, the boys that go through there actually get the same thing that they would in a Career Tech. A Career Tech automotive program will last about 2 years. Because they're not with us that long, but they do earn the certain sections of that and they get certified in that so that they're wanting to, when they leave, they can go back to any Career Tech in the state of Oklahoma and continue the program and not have to do that. So there's just a breakdown of some of the hours of the things that the boys have worked on. We do have, this next slide, I think there's some more. The next slide, we had some cars donated to us from Metro Tech Technology Center, and for the boys to be able to work on, and that really helps a lot because then they can practice doing the same thing over and over again with those vehicles. So we really were very thankful for that support. And the boys will actually work on some of staff vehicles as well, oil changes and things like that. It has been an awesome program for our boys.
So looking forward, I did include the 2018-19 school calendar. It might look a little awkward because we have different start dates, but I wanted to tell you that that's because we want our principal to be at the first day of school at both sites, but also we are actively engaged in Engage OK, and that's an opportunity we offer all of our teachers to go for professional development. And so with our start date and the training providing from the State Department of Education closest to those sites, we had to be a little creative with the first day calendar so they have the opportunity to participate in that PD. And last year we had 100% attendance of our staff at that program, so thank you. You can see the first and last days at Kojak and Swojak. And then I also wanted to take the time and opportunity to talk to you guys a little bit about our Next Generation campus, which is coming soon. It was a piece of legislation that went through last year that will be a new campus that will be out at Tecumseh, and that campus will be the home of all of our juveniles served in that type of facility. So Swojak kiddos will actually move to that facility, and it will also be the home of where our girls will stay as well. So we are looking at a new campus, and there's a quick little video that I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to pause it when we get to it. I was too fast. Oh, I didn't pause. I'm sorry. I messed that up. Well, anyways, I do want to talk a little bit about what that campus is going to look like. We will have our traditional school building. If we can pause it when it's that overview is what I was trying to do unsuccessfully.
Say when.
Okay. Okay, when? I think we can see there. Okay, so we do have our school building, which will be right over here. And then attached to it, we will have a career technology program. Like she said, we do have the automotive program at Southwest, which we will move all that equipment to Tecumseh. And at Tecumseh right now, we have a career or computer programming that we have as well as for career tech. But next Monday, I'm meeting with Gordon Cooper to finalize some of the programs that we are wanting to offer, and we're going to expand our career opportunities for the gentlemen that we serve. And we are looking at expanding into like 6 different programs that are going to be offered at that one site. So over here will be our shops that will have the automotive. Also, we're looking at possible construction, woodworking, some different things like that. And then in another building, we're going to have food handling and different programs that we can offer a variety of different career opportunities that will help our gentlemen go out and our ladies go out and hopefully find jobs. And it's the same partnership with Career Tech that the hours they earn there, they can transfer to any Career Tech that has that same program. So we do look at that with our gentlemen. If they want to go into automotive, we look at where are they from, is that program available? If not, is there a program close to them that they can take those hours and continue to work towards that industry certification?
So Manitou is closing and they're all being moved?
May I?
Yes, please.
You might be able to articulate that a little bit better.
Yeah, so over the next several years, and you're probably looking at a period of time from 24 to 36 months. The Manitou campus will be closed, and all the residents there, well, at the time, the residents that are currently there will have likely left our system, but as far as bed capacity, the Manitou campus will close. We're working diligently on a repurpose for that campus. There's a lot of things that we would like to do, but by consolidating all of our kids currently in secure care, and secure care is my highest level of care. This would be comparable to a medium security prison. They're not the same organizationally per se, but it would be comparable. Having all of ours in one place, you know, if you do the math, that's only 140 beds. And so I get a tremendous amount of organizational efficiency and strong quality of operational offering for my kids by having all of them in one place. I think one thing that's important to note, and this is good news for our state, is if you look historically at both the number of kids that are coming into OJA through referrals, and then you look at the OSBI arrest records relative to arrests of juveniles. In both of those cases, you're going to see a significant trend line down. And so the news in that regard is very, very good because fewer kids are becoming entangled with the juvenile justice system, which is very opposite to what we're seeing at the adult level. I mean, we talk regularly about the pressure on adult DOC, but at the juvenile level, both in arrest and referral, we're seeing significant trend lines that are favorable for the state. Now, I will say this, the acuity of the kids coming to see us is much more significant. And by that I mean that it's at one level of offense, but also in terms of the number of adverse childhood experiences they've seen as they work through child welfare system, the lack of mental health and substance abuse services, both for them but also for their parents, and certainly the number of kids that have not succeeded and have been asked to leave traditional classroom settings. So the acuity of the kid much higher, but the number of kids declining significantly. So it was very important for us to think about how to have a campus that appropriately served the needs of these young people. And one thing I would point out, those of you that are in school understand how important it is to have buildings built for the function that you operate. My current secure care footprint consists of a repurposed high school, a repurposed substance abuse treatment facility, and a repurposed school for wayward girls. And that is how we're providing juvenile justice services in our state as far as our organizational structure. So the ability for us to work with the governor's office and with the legislative leadership and community partners to do a campus built for this population to focus on education and rehabilitation was a tremendous opportunity for the state.
And the wayward girls are going to be included here?
Well, the Wayward Girls is actually our existing campus, but yes, our young women will be included on this campus. One of the things that we're challenging ourselves internally is one of our next deals. Our young girls do not currently have access to the charter school. They are very capably served by their local district, and I don't want to suggest for a second that the district where they're located is not doing good work, but because of the unique nature of our kids, this charter is really innovative in the sense that we are able to do things to help serve these young people who have been transient, candidly, their entire life. I mean, they have been, I was visiting with a young man who received services through Letitia School, but graduated from Welch, who counted in his recollection is 50 different placements in his lifetime. That's his recollection. And so the staff that we have does extraordinary work in understanding the unique nature of the kids that are juvenile justice involved. And what we know is, for so many of these kids, education was nowhere on the horizon as a dream. And the work we're doing is helping them understand, and this may be the first time in their generational tree, that education is attainable and they can succeed. So I apologize for stepping in on that question. Yeah.
This has been a huge success story. I still remember back, this board remembers back 3 years ago when this was put in your all's hands and for the approval of the charter school, and the local school districts were adamantly opposed to it because they were losing funds. And you all made a great presentation that this is a unique population that you needed to be uniquely served, and it has been borne out by the progress. I would like to see it shows the progress over the years, but I remember earlier presentations that showed the tremendous progress in comparison to when they were under local school districts. And it is dramatic. I would like to see the expansion of what you're doing to non-incarcerated kids that are about to be incarcerated by the courts, because I think that's a significant group that can be served by your organization and can relieve a problem that is in the polling. Salary was a great part of the reason why teachers are leaving, but classroom disruption was another important ingredient, and I'm willing to bet that classroom disruption is caused by kids that are disruptive and that kids that are disruptive are probably kids that are almost ready to be incarcerated by the courts. And I think that programs that can be geared toward them and education toward them could prevent them being incarcerated. And that could be the next step, would be a charter school that would be geared toward that population. And I think I've mentioned before that in Maps for Kids, I was on a committee that did a polling of the teachers in Oklahoma City, and the most important issue to teachers in Oklahoma City was disruptive kids. That was more important than pay or anything. That was what was preventing the learning in Oklahoma City from occurring in the classroom. And so you could be an important element in the lives of these kids, but you could be an important element in the raising of the standards in the general population also. So anyway.
I think one of the biggest important things that we try to look at for the youth we serve is consistency. And with our gentlemen and the population that we serve, and educators know how hard it is every time they move. When they move, they're losing months of instruction. One move is detrimental to their learning. And the people they move a lot. They're mobile. But also with that is the consistency. I mean, just even across districts, just because when a kid moves out of a classroom and they might be on unit 13 lesson 1, if they move to another district, they might already be on unit 15 lesson 3. So there's these gaps. And so the best thing that we could offer is just that consistency. So it's the same program that goes from just a login, from different sites, then it's still that same program that's moving with them when they're going from detention center to a facility or back to the detention center or whatever it might be. And so it's really just that consistency without the holes is what we're hoping to eventually be able to provide for our youth.
In your curriculum, do you have any life skills integrated into
Absolutely.
your?
Absolutely, and it's required through our accreditation with the juvenile justice as well. So they actually have extensive life skill training, but we do as well. I mean, as our school, we really focus on the core academic side of everything, but our kids are required, and even down into our other facilities that we contract with, for so many hours of life skill training as a week.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Very good. Thank you. It's such, it was something that was an indelible experience for me when I was invited to come and spent a day with you there and had the opportunity to visit with the students, and really a day I never will forget, and I want to go back, but just really the power of what can be accomplished through education and through a tailored approach to meet the needs of unique students.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I've got one question.
Yes, sir.
The financial statements that you provided were June 30 of 16. Is June 30 of 17 roughly the same looking?
As far as it's what we're looking at. It's all about the same trend as far as spending and everything, and that will be reported next year. Since this is the annual report, I know it's January of 2018, but it's actually a report for the 16-17 school year. It's just a little bit delayed as far as the timeline, and that's because of the next agenda item that's coming up is our contract was due. So we waited to present at the same time as our contract. So in the future, we're looking at having our annual report earlier in the school year, so it's not going to be so awkward, I guess.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Superintendent and board members. Transitioning to the next item, this item is a request to renew the previously mentioned sponsorship contract with the Office of Juvenile Affairs. I'm happy to answer any questions as always. I believe you do have a redlined version of that contract for you as well as a clean version. I will just mention and then open it up to any questions. The most material changes to the contract, in my opinion, the former contract, which is the current contract, had two performance frameworks. The proposed contract before you today incorporates that into one, as it's a more streamlined contract. Second thing, there's a proposal to alter the sponsorship fee and take that from the current 5% to 3%.
What that does is allows the school to receive or retain more of the funds that are allocated.
And the contract has all the significant operational changes as we discover over the years. It's been fine-tuned. It's also acceptable to them.
Yes, sir, I believe so.
It's also acceptable to the department.
Yes, sir, I believe so.
Okay. I make a motion that we approve the amended agreement.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Keating?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Ms. Franks?
Yes.
Superintendent Hoffmeister?
Yes. All right. Thank you. Motion carries. Mr. Clark.
Thank you. The next item, our next two items are requests to convene an executive session to discuss the identified pending litigation matters, and so that would be my recommendation and request.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Board members, please call the roll. Or, I'm sorry, Secretary.
Ms. Franks?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Keating?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Superintendent Hoffmeister?
Yes. All right, we will move into executive session. Thank you for those of you who've been in attendance to this point. All right, we're coming out of executive session. Let the record reflect there were no decisions made for action during that time. I do want the record to show that we had invited David Kenny, attorney David Kenny, into the meeting, as well as Matt Holder and the attorney from the AG's office, whose name is
Mithin Mansangani.
Okay, very good, thank you. We also, do we need a vote to come out of executive?
Vote to,
Okay.
yes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, please call the roll.
Ms. Franks?
Yes.
Mr. Flanagan?
Yes.
Mr. Keating?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Superintendent Hoffmeister?
Yes. All right, so we have lost 2 of our members. Now, Mr. Clark. Is there any new business, item 12? Okay, none that I'm aware of either. All right, board members, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. All right, any by like sign disagree, want to stay here for the rest of the afternoon? I don't hear anyone, so we are adjourned. All right.